Scott.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you got into Land Cruisers?
Yeah, I used to be into off-road racing in the early 70s. And I was friends with a well-known racer by the name of Parnelli Jones. And I'm a good friend of mine by the name of Bill Rush. Bill Rush drove for Bill Strop and Associates out of Signal Hill. And Bill Rush was known as Wild Bill from Signal Hill. I also have a picture of my dune buggy that I built. It has Parnelli Jones sitting in the driver's seat, sitting sideways. Bill Rush with his boot on the top of the rear tire. There was also a friend of Parnelli Jones, who was a former winner of the Indianapolis 500, standing there. So that's how I got into Land Cruisers, was people that were friends of Bill Rush had Land Cruisers, and I got involved with them. In fact, there was times when I drove them. They brought them out to Mexico, and I drove them around, and I really fell in love with them. And I've had several Land Cruisers since.
Tell me about your first one.
My first Land Cruiser. The green and white 75 had custom paint on it. It only had 12,000 miles on it, and it was like brand new. He had custom paint job on it. The factory paint was green, dark green, and then he had some pearlescent put on each side of the hood, and it was pinstriped, and it looked very nice. I ended up buying it on the spot, and that thing was like brand new. You open up the doors, the floor mats looked like nobody had ever stepped into it. It was quite a vehicle, and that was my first one. And I've had several since.
I remember the first one. I grew up in that car, and I'll put up some pictures of me in a car seat in there, and then later on standing up in the back.
Yeah, I belonged to a Land Cruiser club also, and we used to meet out off of Paramount Boulevard and the 91 freeway. The first place we went to was Calico, and Scott was in his onesie pull-on little suit that kids had. We got on a trail. There was a little hill going up the road, and Scott stood up and he goes, "Faster, Daddy, faster." And he loved that. And I climbed that hill, and he was standing up on the seat, holding on to the bar that was right over the glove box.
Remember, this was the 70s. Safety was different then.
And I mean, you know, we went away for the whole weekend. I just told my wife, we're gonna go away for the weekend. I'm taking Scott with me, and we're taking the Land Cruiser.
So I also remember going with you near the airport and watching the planes land.
Yes, we lived near LAX. You could go down one of the streets near there and watch the planes get ready to land, and they would come over you pretty low. So get some sandwiches or whatever for us to eat. It had no top on it, and the doors were off of it. And I'd take Scott and park. The plane would just, it looked like it was going to land on top of you. Yeah, that was really, really fun.
Yeah.
And we would do that weekend after weekend and have a lot of fun.
And we got stuck one time.
Oh, yes. We're going up Highway 101 towards Ventura. There's a bridge crosses over, and under the bridge is an area where people would bring their four-wheel drives and drive them up and down in there. Well, I decided, let's drive down in there. So, and I had two really nice speaker boxes in the back, and we had the top and the doors on at that time. And the back doors were like ambulance doors, so I had them wedged in between the back seats and the doors. So we were driving, and it got pretty slick down there, and you didn't want to stop because you knew that you couldn't get started again because you couldn't get traction. Well, we hit a big bump, and the speakers fell, made a lot of noise, and I stepped on the brake, which was the wrong thing to do. And we couldn't get started again because it was just slicker than snot on a doorknob. So I got on my CB radio, and by luck, somebody heard me say where I was, "I need a wrecker down here to tow us out of here." We were in some water to the point where you could hear the exhaust gurgle out of the water. And when it came time for the wrecker to get there and to get under there and hook the cable around the frame, I had to get down there with my head under the water with the engine off and put it around the frame so that he could drag me out of where we were. And I said I'd never go down there again. But I figured, hey, I've driven four-wheel drives and all kinds of stuff, sand and everything. And I said, we'll be fine. Well, we weren't.
So that Land Cruiser got sold, and then a while later, when I was about, I guess, 7 years old, you bought another Land Cruiser. That was the 76 with the V8 in it.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah.
He's less excited about that one.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got that one. This thing came with a built-up Chevy V8. Had a pretty good cam in it, and it had dual quads, and it'll pass anything but a gas station. I drove that thing all the way up to Sacramento and surprised Scott and picked him up for his last day of school. Then we drove that thing. I think we drove to Sequoia, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. I forgot about that.
Yeah, we drove to Sequoia National Park and saw the big trees and the big redwoods and all that stuff and drove home. That was quite a trip.
I remember that thing overheating all the time.
Oh, it overheated because the guy that put the motor in didn't move the core support so that the fan wasn't close enough to the radiator to cool it down. Well, I took care of that a year or so later. I took it to a guy that did all kinds of fabrication and welding. I had him move that thing back. Once I did that, it worked fine with that. It was like an 8-bladed flex fan. But I made sure I didn't get the radiator too close to it, because when the flex fan flexes, you could tear up a radiator with it.
You know, back then, when you had these things, that was your car.
Yeah.
That wasn't a toy that you had on the side. That was your everyday drive it to work.
Every day.
Go everywhere you're going to go.
That's right. Absolutely.
And I remember how unhappy you were with that one. It was fun to romp around him, but it was like always overheating and always causing problems.
It got so hot that if I turned the engine off and I went to crank it, it felt like it was half seized. It would just crank like it had a dead battery, but it didn't.
I remember almost dying in that thing. We were on a side hill and we hit ice. And you told everybody in the car, don't move. Don't breathe.
Oh, yeah.
Don't move. Don't do anything.
We went up a back road in Big Bear, and it had snowed, and then there was ice patches. And I figured, I've got great tires, and I figured if I drive to the left of that ice patch, I could do well. Well, little did I know that because of the width of the vehicle, they were just on ice. And the vehicle started to slide. I'd say about 6 feet over was the end of the cliff. And if we didn't make it, we would just drop down about, a couple hundred feet. So I said, whatever you do, don't move. Because it was that critical. I didn't want that damn thing to start moving because somebody moved around inside the cab. It was pretty dicey. I would start out and then I'd back up so that I could turn the wheels and try to move over to the left as far as I could, as far away from the edge of the cliff. And somehow we made it.
The reason that particular one has an importance in my life is you made a promise to me when I was younger that as soon as my feet reached the pedals, you would teach me how to drive.
As soon as your feet touched the pedals and you could see over the steering wheel.
Yeah. And that happened when I was 8 years old.
Yeah, and I would teach you how to drive.
He didn't lie.
I took him down into a river bottom that was dry. It was just sand. And I said, okay, Scott, time for you to learn how to drive. So he got in there, and I made sure that the four-wheel drive was in low range. And I had him put it in first gear, showed him where all the gears were, had him show me how you could shift it. And I told him, I said, you can scratch this thing up. You can roll it, because I had a good roll cage in it, but don't shift without the clutch, because I had just spent a fortune rebuilding the transmission and the transfer case. And he did good. There were a few scratches only because of the brush that was there. He couldn't have gone past it without scratching it up. But the scratches came out. It was no big deal. That's where he learned to drive.
Very first thing I ever drove.
Yep.
At 8 years old.
And he got bitten by the bug.
Yeah.
He's always had a four-wheel drive vehicle. The vehicle that I'm leaning against here is a 72 Fj40 Land Cruiser. We just checked it out, and the engine is junk, and we're going to pull it out. We're going to put a 5-speed transmission and a small block Chevy, and then we'll put in a special transfer case because the stock ones are prone to crack, and because they're aluminum, the case is. So yeah, we're going to do it right. We're going to put this thing back together properly and have the right stuff in it. And we have doors and a top for this, and we're going to use that. And Scott's going to put air conditioning in it, and this is going to be his daily driver. Right,
it's going to be my car. So my dad drove this for a while here and there, but never as his only car. And then he started having problems with his knees, and stopped driving it altogether. And it sat here in my backyard for, I didn't sit here, it sat here. Huh? Yeah, it sat here.
Yeah.
It sat in my backyard for about 11 years, 12 years. And then right before my wife and I got married about 2 years ago, he gave it to us as a wedding present. And, in this backyard, my dad built his dune buggy when he was younger. And he had a 36 Ford when he was 12 years old that he worked on back here. My grandpa bought him to keep him off the streets, out of the gangs and all that.
Yep.
And he and I built a 32 Ford, which I'll put a picture of, when he retired, and he still has that. And I built my 50. He and I built my 50 Chevy back here, and I built a lot of stuff along the way. And I've had a few Land Cruisers come and go too, but this one's special because it was my dad's. And I don't really see him buying another one.
No.
And I don't see me buying another one. This is going to be my keeper. It's going to be my daily driver. And it's not going to be a restoration because it's not what I need in order to operate. It's going to be, like you said, V8 and 5-speed air conditioning and whatnot. All that's been done before.
Yeah.
What makes it special is that we're doing it together.
Yep.
So my question is, after all that, now he's got new knees. After all that, are you up for one more build?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's what makes this special to me, is that, I don't know if you want me to say your age, but I'll say my age.
No, you can tell my age.
All right. So he's 79. I'm 49. I didn't really think that we were going to get a chance to work together on a project again. He's in good health and I'm in good health, but we haven't been at the point where we're, gathering to build a vehicle in a very, very long time. Not since the Deuce in 2000.
Yeah, we built it right here where this is sitting.
So it matters to me to get a chance. I watched Vice Grip Garage a lot, and I see Derek working with his sons, and I always think to myself, man, I'd love to work with my dad again. That'd be cool. So the fact that I get one more chance to work with my dad is really, really cool, and that's what makes this project special.
Yep.
And that's why I've titled it the way I've titled it, and that's why you'll see these videos coming out as we go. And you can follow us over at I Hate Mud on the thread, and I'll put all the follow stuff in the description.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited to work with you again.
Yeah, I am too.
And we'll get this thing functional.
Yep, I'm familiar with these things.
Yeah.
I put all this stuff on the front of this.
So here's my question. I know you got fresh new knees now. Are you going to drive it when it's done?
Oh, you darn right I am.
All right. All right, cool.
You couldn't pry me out of this thing.
Let's go get stuck somewhere.
Let's go.
Okay.
Yeah, bring it on.
All right, well, join us next time and we'll see where we are. Start pulling it apart.